Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, and I want to take a moment to focus on you, the listeners of The Wedding Biz. Based on the DMs I receive and the metrics that I get, people are listening from all over the world, and there are literally thousands of downloads every single month. I can also see that you all are listening extensively to the back catalog, as well as each week's new episode. And ready for this? Today's interview or conversation is the 500th one. 500. I can barely believe it. And so I want to take this moment to thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart for being such loyal listeners. And also for anyone who is listening for the first time, welcome to our community. So if you missed last week's episode, it was with planner designer Fallon Carter. Today's guest is Jennifer Stein, editor-in-chief, publisher, and co-owner of Destination I Do and Destination Media. When Jennifer and her business partner began Destination Media 20 years ago, it was with the intent to report on all things destination weddings, honeymoons, and romance travel related, and to fill a gap in the wedding industry, one that would show real couples around the world celebrating their destination weddings. And since then, the media outlet has grown from a small, glossy publication sold around the United States to a sought-after brand known for serving the destination wedding readers wherever they are, from the airwaves to Pinterest and everything in between. Jennifer and I have always had amazing conversations, so if you want to check out more interviews of her, go to theweddingbiz.com and search by her name in the search field at the top of the page. Enjoy this conversation with Jennifer Stein. Hey, Jen, it has been a long time. I'm so glad we're back on again on the microphones here. This is going to be a blast.
I know. Hi, Andy. I'm so excited to join you again.
Yeah, every one of our conversations is just like electric. So I'm psyched about this. So
me too.
Yeah. So I'm aware that sometime this year, Destination I Do will have been in business for 20 years. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I know. I'm literally like, it makes me just feel old and want to run to get more Botox and color my hair and all the things. Like, how has it been 20 years? I don't even know.
My company's older than yours. So wait a minute.
Oh, God. Oh, that's crazy,
yeah.
Andy.
It's nuts. And I believe, weren't you the first to cover destination weddings, where that's your business? Weren't you the first one to do that? And still pretty much one of the few.
Yeah, we were. So when we first started, there was a magazine called Islands, Weddings and Honeymoons, but it was specifically about just tropical destinations. There was nothing that was covering places like Europe or wine country or, even like a barn in the middle of a forest. And so we when we first started, we're like, gosh, there's got to be couples that are wanting something beyond just the beach. And so we started Destination I Do. And then quickly after that, I think about, 6 months to a year later, there was another product called Destination Weddings and Honeymoons that came out. And they were kind of our main competition. And then they shuttered in, I think, like 2015 or 2016. And then along the way, there were a few. I know The Knot and Travel and Leisure came out with like a spinoff issue called, I think it was like Travel and Romance. I know I think it was Martha Stewart had a destination wedding magazine, but they always were like quick little, I think they were just like testing the market. And they never really stuck around. So yeah, we were kind of like the OG, and then we've continued to be like the leader in the pack. And I do know there's a few blogs and things out there that feature destination weddings. And of course, the mainstay outlets like brides.com and The Knot, they always cover destination weddings. But that's our entire subject. Like,
right. That's your business. Yeah.
That's all we're talking about. Exactly.
Well, how long was it, Jen, before your company turned a profit? I mean, was there some kind of a tipping point?
So when we first started, I was like, I was so green. I was only like 27. And I just, I had worked in publishing for about 5 years. And I knew everything, not everything, but I knew enough to start my own product. And my business partner was my mom. And so when we first started, we were so green. We're like, yeah, we're going to turn a profit within the first 6 months. Like, we were so, I was like, you should have seen my business plan. It was like we were going to be turning not just a profit, but a huge profit.
Right.
And then reality like slapped me right across the face. And I don't think we actually broke even until maybe 3 years into the business. And the tipping point for that really, I think, was just time. But then as far as like turning a profit, that was later. And I think that was a combination of just time, brand awareness, and just like established relationships that we had made. So, when you first start a product, there's always, at first, there's going to be a few that just jump on board because they're excited. They want to be part of something new. It's exciting. And so my very first sales call was to Turtle Island, which is in Fiji. And I sold them. So of course, my very first like cold call, and I get a yes. I'm like,
wow,
oh,
that's unusual.
Right? Yeah. Like we're golden. And then the next call was a no. And the next call was a ghost. And then and so we had I think 4 advertisers our first issue. And if you saw our first issue, you would have laughed and been like, these people don't know what the hell they're doing. It's embarrassing, but you evolve, you figure it out, you make mistakes, and it's messy. And we were messy. And, we figured things out by falling flat on our faces over and over again. But every time, I think part of it was I had the energy back then. I didn't have a family to support. So I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. So for me, it was I took all of my savings. I maxed out my credit card. It was the only quote unquote loan I took. It was on my own credit card. And, I was like, what's the worst that can happen? I'll go back and find another job if this fails. But then at the point where we were 3 years in, it was I was invested. I really didn't want it to fail. I was like, we've worked this hard. 3 years at that time seemed like a long time. And so, we really wanted to make sure that it was going to take off. And so then we started kind of taking any money we made and reinvesting it into the company to just make it bigger, hire more people, that kind of thing. And so, it was a while before we were actually turning a profit.
Well, was there some kind of a tipping point to doing that? Well, you know what? Actually, let me go back for a minute. You were talking about, mistakes that you were making and which we all do. And I know that myself included, when I started my business, same thing. I thought I would be profitable by a huge amount really quickly. And, and all the challenges I ran into, I just had to, talk to friends, my peers, and to be, I guess, not just consoled, but reminded that this is typical, starting a new business or wanting to grow to a whole nother level, that, you start putting in some new kind of ways of doing that. And there's times we're going to fall flat on our face. So I'm wondering, what are some of the biggest challenges to stay in business that you had to go through, and how did you get through them? Whether it's financial or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing for us was resources. We've never in 20 years had an investor. We've never borrowed outside of my own personal finances where I maxed out my credit card. We've never borrowed money ever. Okay. And I think part of that, one of the first things we ran up against was we started our company in 2004. And by 2006, we had a massive, the mortgage crisis happened. By 2008, I was watching major bridal publications fold,
right,
left and right. I remember Modern Bride, I think around that time. Yeah. That was one of the first major wedding publications to go under.
I think Inside Weddings too, wasn't that one that also folded? But I remember Modern Bride folding.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was to the point where it just felt like, a mass exodus for publishers, and we're kind of hitting that again right now, and have been for a little while. But yeah, so there was financially, it was, I think, because that was, as much as us not borrowing money was wise, it also it felt like it kind of hamstrung us a little bit because we weren't able to level up because we didn't have the resources to do it. Right. So we stayed small and we stayed intentional. And I think in some ways that's helped us. In some ways that's hurt us. Because I would see other publications kind of leapfrog us, and I'm seeing them do these big parties, and they've got it just seems like they're just lavish, right? And I'm going, well, why aren't we there? And part of the reason is they've got resources and bigger brands behind them, big conglomerate publishing companies are publishing these publications, and we were, a small mom and pop. So it's just, and we made choices to not overextend ourselves financially. And that was a big thing that I think kept our business alive during really scary financial times, including COVID. I mean, COVID was a white knuckle ride, baby. I was like, I don't know if we're going to make this. I don't know. I'm going to give it up to God. You got it, bud. Like, I'm just going to trust that this is going to settle down. And it did. And we're still here.
What about staffing your company, though? I mean, how quickly did you bring on employees or not versus independent contractors? I mean, how did you handle all of that?
Well, that actually was another reason I think that we've survived, is we've never, if we didn't have a full position, full-time position to offer someone, we didn't. We would use an independent contractor for that, whatever it was. If it was IT, if it was, an editorial position. We've always had a full-time editor. We've always had a full-time designer. We've always worked with independent contractors when it comes to sales, in part because we were only publishing twice a year. So for them to try and make their entire salary, or for us to pay them an entire salary, didn't make sense based on the frequency of our publication. So there was a lot of reasons that we used independent contractors. And quite honestly, we've continued. The type of work we do oftentimes is kind of project based. And so for us to we have a whole entire group of independent contractors, some of which we've worked with almost the entire time we've been in business. And so you establish those relationships. It feels like, and we treat them in a lot of ways, emotionally and mentally, like they work every day with us,
Yes, that's important.
We really cherish and pour into those relationships as if they are our employees. But for them, they've got the autonomy and the flexibility to work for other conflicting or non-competitive titles. And it works for everyone. For the independent contractors, when times have been tough, we recognize that, and we do things to try and make sure that their ends are being met. And, we really do treat them many ways as if they were full-time employees with us, even though they're not. All, of course, under the supervision of the IRS. We're not doing anything shady. But, just having those roles and those roles filled in a way that works for us and them, there's definitely some benefit to that.
Yeah, I think, when I think back in my company, I think I hired one too many employees, just a little too quickly. I did. And I understand. Do you ever use virtual assistants?
We don't. Part of the reason is there's just, when we bring someone on, even if they're an independent contractor, we want to just really establish a long-term relationship. And everyone works remotely, but there's been kind of, I don't know, I have a little bit of a resistance of just someone who's doing assistant work. I'd rather have that person physically here with me than to have them working remotely. I think there's certain skill sets that work so well for remote work and independent contractors, like sales and even design, even IT. There's a lot of things where if they've been humming along as an independent contractor for many, many years doing one skill set or another, I have a level of comfort with that. Whereas someone just doing assistant work, I don't know. I kind of that's just not something that I've done. But maybe there's major value to it that I should explore.
Well, and my understanding, I have not hired virtual assistant, but I have some friends who do, and they're telling me that virtual assistants these days can do a lot more complicated work, and that it is possible to have people stick with you for a while. It's really interesting. It's something that I've always been curious about. Maybe I'll do an episode just on that. I've been asked where I gain the inspiration and expertise to host this show, The Wedding Biz, and it all comes from my own experience in the weddings and event industry of creating world-class entertainment to support our custom entertainment design. Kushner Entertainment features outrageously dynamic bands, strings, and a host of other entertainment acts that have won numerous international, national, and local to the Washington, D.C. area awards, not only for individual acts, such as the band Sound Connection, but also for our highly engaging and captivating entertainment design concepts. Go to KushnerEntertainment.com to learn more about the ultimate in event entertainment. That's KushnerEntertainment.com. Didn't you have an opportunity at some point along the way to sell your business? I thought I heard something about that.
Oh, yes. We have almost sold our business 3 separate times. And the very first time it was a company, I don't know if NDAs still apply, but I'm just going to pretend they do. So I won't name any one of the companies that we almost sold to. But the first one was someone in the industry. And I always said to myself, if we're going to sell, I want it to be someone who really understands the wedding industry, who understands the nuance of destination weddings and isn't just going to take us over and shut us down because we're competing, or they're going to take us over and just dismantle it or create some like template ugly magazine, or who knows, And so the first time it happened, it was a company in the wedding industry, and they ended up at the same time getting purchased by another company. So that's the reason that one didn't work out. But what I learned at that moment was part of the reason I was so tempted to sell is I was in a stage of major burnout. And I realized after the fact, I dodged a bullet and then the second time it happened, it was someone who I think I was pregnant with my second child, and I was introduced to this person from someone else that I knew well, and she knew I was pregnant. And I think I hate to say it, but I think this individual was like, oh, she's probably tired. She's about to have her second baby, which means less bandwidth. And I'm going to, and granted, I was again in a state of burnout. And I think they looked at it like, oh, I'm going to get this company for some like fire sale price because she's desperate, wanting to get out of there. And that wasn't the case. And that really slapped some sense into me as well, because I realized that person was really trying to take advantage of a situation they didn't really have a full grasp of, because they didn't really know me very well. And so when I realized what was happening, I was like, oh, no. That you clearly don't know who you're messing with. And I became instantaneously a complete mama bear to my company again. And I was like, and I'm so glad. Oh my gosh, I am so glad that I did not sell at that point. The third time we almost sold, I was not in a stage of burnout, but I was in a stage of I'm ready to level this thing up, like majorly. And it was a local company that they're in the publishing industry. Again, it was someone I knew who had introduced us. And they ended up, part of the reason we didn't end up going through with the sale is because it was during COVID. But one of the things that happened during that time was I had a really pivotal conversation with the owner of the company, and we were going through our financials, which is always a really vulnerable place to be, right? Because you're like,
Sure.
Are we worth as much as they think we are? And, that's always it's just really vulnerable. And so, we're showing over our financials and giving them the goods. And they were like, oh my gosh, this is so impressive. You guys don't owe any money to anyone. You don't have leases on any, like, this is such a clean sale. Like, this is going to be so easy. But one of the things that the owner said to me is, wow, you're just not paying yourself enough.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, what? I'm not? And, because so oftentimes business owners will just, instead of paying themselves what they're really worth, they'll say, well, I need this for my company, or I need that for my company, or I want, and then they just take that money that they would have given themselves and they roll it right back into the company. And and it was one of those things that it was like a total wake up call for me. And this was not that long ago. I mean, this was in 2020. So it was like at that moment, I realized, and I looked at I did one of those searches to see what people doing my job would make. And he was totally right. Oh my God, he was so right. And at that moment, I said, that's it. That's it. I'm paying myself what I'm worth. And I started that. And it has made, quite honestly, I didn't realize how resentful.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
The underlying resentment I had for my business, but it was a choice I was making, right? It was something I was doing to myself and not realizing that I was a little resentful of it. So at that moment, I started paying myself what I was worth, and it gave me a infusion of energy, quite honestly. And I'm not a person who really cares all that much about money, but I think just the psychological impact that it had of just kind of discounting my own worth within my own company, what? So yeah, that was a big wake up call for me.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jen. While you're saying this, I'm thinking back. It was about 5.5 years ago, something like that. I was feeling really burnt out. I got extremely burnt. And for a lot of various reasons, I think a lot of it is normal. I mean, I talked to a lot of these big hitters that we both know, some of these really big planners, either on the microphone or off the microphone, they'll tell me, that they either are currently kind of burned out or they went through that kind of a phase. And I think it could come and go and come and go. But for me, I had been running the company like in terms of being in charge of everything. Yes, I would have an employee and then 2 employees and a ton of independent contractors, but I was solely basically responsible in the end for 27 years, something like that. And I got fried from it, and it started affecting me in a lot of different ways. Plus, I was investing way too much in the company, and I had a similar issue as you. I was paid well, but I wasn't paying myself enough. Really, I kept putting back in the company, and I would get, I've got, as you know, this entertainment business, and so I would spend way too much money on various aspects of it, whether it was getting the best equipment or spending an incredible amount of money, more than anyone else in the world, for promotional videos. I just felt I had to have the best. I had to, and I spent so much money. So for all these various reasons, I was getting really burnt. And then, my solution ended up being getting a business partner. And I sold part of my business and got this wonderful business partner. And Jen, it's funny because we laugh about it. It's like we dated, weekly for a year. It kind of felt like that. We got together almost every week for almost a year. And really got to know each other well and talk about the details of each other's businesses and what our philosophies are and how we manage and just all of it. And ended up partnering. It was funny enough, about 6 months before the pandemic hit, or maybe 8 months, and we were killing it. It was the best decision I'd made. And then we got hit with the pandemic. But after the pandemic, now we're doing great, really well, and so excited about the future. And I got re-energized, really re-energized. And so, I could relate a lot to being burned out and what do we do? And, before I hit the record button, when you and I had first gotten on the mic a few minutes ago, you were also talking about how if you're feeling burnt out, you can also find a way to do something different within your business. I wonder more specifically what you meant by that.
Well, during 2020, we really sat and listened to our clients. The first thing we did when everything started going downhill and there was lockdowns and we lost 95% of our advertising contracts in 4 weeks.
Whoa. Oh my God.
And we'd go from having a person that we'd worked with for years and years and our main contact, they were furloughed. And then we'd have a new contact. And then a few weeks later, we have a new contact and then a new one. And, it was like the same thing happening at every single property. And most of our clients, most of our advertisers are hotels and resorts, visitors bureaus, things like that. And, everybody was struggling. And so the first thing that always goes is marketing. And why would you market during that time, right? No one can even go to a resort, or if they can, it's it's very limited contact and all of that. So I basically contacted all of my sales staff and just said, listen, guys, we are not selling anything. I don't want a single, prospecting email to go out. What we need to do right now is ask the people who have invested in us what they need. And what started surfacing was they needed assets. They needed photo shoots. They needed copy written. They needed even full-blown magazines done for themselves. And they didn't have, because, and this was a little further into the pandemic, but what we learned was people that were, comfortably in their job in 2019 were now wearing the hats of 7 people and getting paid to do the job of 1. And so they were so spread thin. Talk about burnout. And we started really, when we would communicate with them, it was very much with the idea in place of what can we do to help you right now? Like, we're not going to charge you anything, but like, what do you need? And so they started kind of telling us. And when the time came that the budgets came back and we realized we can create content with our hands tied behind our backs. That's what we do anyway for Destination I Do. So why can't we do it for other people? And so all of a sudden, a lot of our clients were saying, hey, can you fly to Mexico and do a full-blown photo shoot? Can you, come and do a catering brochure for us? And I partner with someone named Harmony Walton, who is literally the coolest.
Yeah, I know her. She was on the show long ago.
Oh my God. She's like literally one of the most talented, brilliant people in our industry. And so she and I started working together on certain projects and helping different hotels with their catering materials. And, if they had like a sales deck for weddings, and it was like a 35-page PDF and it wasn't really serving them anymore, and they had the time to kind of revamp it and they had budgets to do it, we'd help them. And I mean, that's what we do. We're storytellers. And so we started helping these companies tell their story. And so it became, within 3 years, we went from, probably 75% of our revenue is coming from Destination I Do to maybe 50% was coming from custom published pieces, helping, create photo shoots or whatever the case may be. And now we're probably about 65% of our revenue is coming from that. So clearly there's a need. And we love doing it. It's literally it's like Christmas morning for me when I get to look at a brand and go, all right, what do they need? What story are they not telling that they're it's hurting their revenue stream, or they're just not representing a certain group of people, or whatever the case may be. And for me, it's something that I so passionately love to do. And it kind of came at a time that things were looking pretty bleak. And, just by having those conversations and filling in gaps where we could without charging at the time. And now that budgets are back, a lot of people are hiring for those kinds of jobs, and they need it and they need the help, and we love doing it and we're good at it. So that's really, I think also, 20 years in the business, you start to really develop relationships with people. You see them at events like Engage. You see them, at different, just fam trips or whatever. And you start to really get to know them as individuals and what they need from if they're spread too thin or whatever. And we can fill those gaps. And then you get to work with people you absolutely love. Like, how great is that? So I'm just ready to roar. And it's been so much fun the last few years. I have never been more fulfilled in my business. I'm so glad. Oh my God. I'm so glad I did not sell it in 2020 because I wouldn't be experiencing this right now.
Right.
And, I think all along, I'm still making mistakes. I'm still falling on my face all the time. And I think that's part of just entrepreneurship and building something that you love. It's messy. It's never a straight line. It's all over the place. And so, that's really what I've learned. And I think people, I'm a Gen Xer, right? So if I thought at 27 that I'm going to have instant fame and success, not that I really want fame, but success, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be easy. I'm going to have fun. We're going to make money. I don't have to, I don't need to be a billionaire or anything, but I'd like to make some money at it. And I thought it was going to happen overnight, and it didn't. And I've learned so many lessons along the way and fallen on my face so many times and then picked myself back up again. And it's interesting. I don't know if you've watched that show, The Bear. The premise of the show is a guy who his brother dies. And so he takes over his restaurant and he goes through one problem after another. And it's so interesting because I'm on season 2 now. And just last night, we watched an episode where he had a win finally. And the amount of joy after you're just knocked down over and over and over again, and you just get that one win, and the amount of energy and like how much that can carry you from one place in your business to another, it can be transcendent. And there have been times where I just keep getting knocked down. I get one win, and it was like, seeing that episode just made me go, God, I so relate with him as a business owner, because that's exactly been my experience. And I think it's not for the faint of heart. If you ask me, like, would you do this all over again based on the money? Yeah. Hell no, I would not do it over again. But would I do it over again because of the experiences I've had, the people I've met, the things I've learned, the growth I've experienced, the ways that I've shown my kids this is what it looks like to be a woman in business and to treat people right and honestly. Like, I forever would do this all over again 150 times.
Wow. Well, before we go, this has been incredible, Jen, but before we go, overall, as destination weddings seem to be fully back since the pandemic and all, they seem to be fully back, bigger than ever. Would you agree? I mean, how is it going overall?
Oh, yeah. Destination weddings are back with a vengeance. I think that it's almost hard to discern between, like, when we get a wedding submission, we always have to ask, like, is this a destination wedding? Because there's so many details and things that, like, usual hometown weddings you see. And now destination weddings are they're bigger than ever. And it's almost hard to find people who aren't doing them, even if they may, like, the planner or the photographer may not be traveling to the destination, but the couples are traveling to them. And I'm seeing that in states like Ohio, and like they're almost everywhere now. So yes, they are definitely back. Groups are getting together again. I wouldn't say they're all the way back to the size that we saw in like 2019, but they're growing for sure.
Oh, great news. Well, this has been a blast to catch up with you. I mean, and to hear more about the evolution of your business. I mean, it's just been wonderful, Jen. So, I mean, thanks for taking the time to do this.
Oh, hell yeah, Andy. It's always so fun to chat with you. And it's awesome what you're doing, and keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Jennifer Stein. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't keep it to yourself. Tell a friend. You can check out Jennifer's website, and that is destinationido.com. You can find her on social media, on Instagram at DestinationIdo, and on Facebook at DestinationIdoMag. And I want to mention next week's guest. It is going to be destination photographer Anna Roussos, based in Greece. And finally, be sure to follow The Wedding Biz so that you are aware of whenever a new episode drops. And you could also follow us, particularly on Instagram at The Wedding Biz, and we'll catch you next week.